Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of TCG Talk, back today with another video. In today's video, as you can see in the thumbnail and the title, we are doing the infamous tier list or meta discussion. With the Rosetta set coming out, I wanted to kind of talk about where I see the meta shaping, what decks are going to be highly represented, lowly represented, what are going to be meta picks, non-meta picks, and just have some fun with it. So if you're new to the channel, welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. Hopefully enjoy your stay. If you're a long-standing supporter, thank you so much as always. Feel free to check out the Discord down below, as well as the channel membership if you want to support the channel in a different way. But yeah, we'll get right into it. So when it comes to tier list and meta discussions, everyone's always so contentious about it, right? Couple things. I think there's two times that where doing this is really fun. One time is before a huge event, like right before Worlds, right? Like a week before Worlds, we'll probably do this again, see where we stand, see what changed, and have some fun with it. The other time that I actually think is really fun time to make like tier lists and meta videos and like pieces of content is when we know nothing yet. Because like that's the fun where you can like make these wild picks and you can kind of like try to see if you can guess, right? Like you go to traditional sports, because I wanted to bring this up because I saw some people on Twitter like dogging people, not hard, but a little bit, for like making tier lists, saying like, how could you know the set's not even out yet? Like this is not, this is disingenuous and stuff like that. And I think that's kind of weird because like one, it's just fun. It's a card game. Like that's the whole point. But two, like it's really cool to try to make these predictions before anything happens and then see how right you were. Like people do it in sports all the time. They make, the way too early top 25 like the week after the championship game in NCAA football, or they'll make their Super Bowl pick, in the preseason, stuff like that. So I think it's really fun. I took a page out of the Card Guys book and I decided to make a quad chart rather than a tier list because I think that this is going to be a little bit more applicable for this upcoming meta, because I do think there's certain heroes that they may be like, I'm just going to give an arbitrary number, like 5th or 6th in terms of power, but they might be like 2nd or 3rd in terms of representation. So when you're going into your ProQuest season, because we're going to talk about the 3 iterations of the meta, you might have to worry about those heroes a little bit more just because you're probably going to see them more, right? Rather than a hero that might be like 1 or 2 notches above them in terms of power, but won't be represented as much. And we'll talk about that. So I have a quad chart here. As you can see, the top is high representation. Then we have low representation, meta pick, which is like, top decks, and then passion pick. Kind of go from there. So we'll make it easy, and we'll start with Arachne. Arachne is not a very good deck right now. Uziri and Nu both do a little bit better. I'm still going to rep Arachne in my armories because I love the hero, but can't be too biased on this one. Arachne is not in a great spot, right? Then we go into Azalea. Azalea is very interesting. So we have 3 iterations of this meta, and I wanted to clear this up. So in the upcoming meta, we have like Rosetta release, which is like obviously the week Rosetta release is the 20th, and then we have those first 2 battle hardens. One's in Tokyo, and I forgot where the other one is. Those 2 is like step 1 of the meta. Then the second step will be ProQuest season. Then the third step of the Rosetta meta will be Worlds, right? Like that's our 3 iterations, and I think all 3 of those are going to look different. I think step 1, you're going to see Enigma, and we'll talk about this in a second, be really popular in the first couple battle hardens. Then I think once ProQuest season comes up, you'll start to see the Rosetta heroes rise up once people figure them out. And then once we go to Worlds, I think Mechanologists actually do really well. But we'll talk about that. So regardless, prior to the bans, I think Azalea was like right here, right? Because she still struggled in the Zen. She could beat Zen, but it was very hard. So I put her right here, and her representation kind of went down. I think she was probably like right here. In certain parts of the world, you saw her kind of like right here, but really she was basically right here, right? Kind of in the middle in terms of representation, and then a little bit on the good side. Like you can't put her in as a bad pick. She was a fair pick, but with the bans, I think she goes a lot higher. And I think her representation goes up a little bit in terms of like over the 50% mark. Because if you think of the representation line, right, of right here across this line, is like, I think like this right here is like in the middle of whatever chart you see. So I think she's kind of highly represented somewhat. She's going to be like one of the premier, I guess, aggro / disruptive decks. And then I do think she's also pretty good. I think she'll be good into a lot of the Rosetta heroes because she has the dominate effect. Yes, they can run D-Reacts, but they can't really... Verdance and Florian both seem like they're going to want to run a late game pick, or a late game like archetype to some extent. And then Acilio is just going to want to burn down And then we have Aurora, who's also going to burn down. She can race Aurora and Acilio, and she can get around Florian and Verdance's, like, late game tools, I think. So super excited to see where she goes. I think she's about right there if I had to give. I think she'll have decent representation. And I think she's probably like right in the middle of the good deck side, if that had to make sense. Also, if you hear people going crazy in the background, my cats are doing Daytona 500 right now. Regardless. Then we have Betsy, the new specialization. I mean, no, I'm just kidding. I feel bad for Betsy. Betsy's really cool, though. The new specialization's really cool. I don't think 8 or 9 overpower gets there, though. She's kind of down here with Arachne. I would actually put her below Arachne. I'd rather be playing Arachne than Betsy right now. I know that might have a little bit of bias, but that's just where I put her. I don't think anyone's going to be playing her, so her representation goes all the way down. And, it's really weird to play her because you're either playing Victor for the competitive aspect, or you're playing most like really hardcore Guardian stands that still love old school Guardian will play Bravo, right? Very few people play Betsy. It's just how it is. So it is what it is. Then we have Bolton, or Sir Bolton. This is in alphabetical order, I guess, by not counting surnames or titles. So Bolton is not a very good pick right now. I don't think it's obviously where these are, but I do think it's just not very good. I think it's probably around this range. And then as far as representation, you're probably going to see pretty low representation. A little bit more in Arachne. So I guess if we put them like this, we'll slowly move these how they are. I think Bolton's kind of like right there. It's not like a god-awful pick, but it's also not great, and I don't think it's going to be very highly represented. Probably around right there is what I would say. Then we have Bravo. Same thing. Better than Betsy, technically. So I guess it goes up in terms of meta pick. It's probably better than Arachne, but it's also going to be equally as underrepresented. So it's probably right there. We're going to run out of room on some of these spots. But that's probably where I would put it, honestly. Bravo and Betsy are kind of in the same spot in terms of representation. Bravo's just probably a slightly better pick. So that's where I would put it. Then we have Dash. Dash is a really good pick right now. I think Dash has some tools. There's the Armory kit. If you want to do like the Boost Dash version, I think gave her some little stuff. Not as much as Dio and Max, but it's probably some small tools that you can use. I definitely think she's like up there with Azalea. I don't think she'll be as represented. I'd probably put her like right in the middle in terms of like representation. Like she's right on the center line. But I would put her probably equally as good of a pick as Azalea. Just not as represented is probably where I would put her, I think. I don't know. You never see a ton of Dashes, even when Dash is good in the meta. Like there's certain parts of the world that love their Dash, especially over in the APAC region. But overall, like worldwide, I don't know if she is, quite there in terms of representation. But she's a really good pick, and I'd probably put her on the same rung as Azalea when it comes to like where they are in the meta. Then we have Dorinthia. Dorinthia is so hard to rank in any tier list because there's several types of Dorinthia, right? You have Decimator, Hatchets, and Dawnblade. Granted, Hatchets and Dawnblade are probably the more prominent ones. Speaking in terms of Dawnblade, she's literally probably like right in the middle. Actually, like probably like right here is probably what I would put Dorinthia in terms of like Dawnblade. Hatchets I actually think gets a little bit better. Probably like right here. But I don't think she's going to be very represented. I think Warrior in general will be interesting to see how good Warrior does. I don't know. Warrior's just kind of been... I mean, Hatch's story did have her time in the sun a little bit when at, like, what, the PT for last. So I do think that they could come back a little bit with the game slowing down, and it will be interesting to see like how if Hatchet's story and Kasai Kasai got hurt with cash in, but Hatchet's story comes back with the bans a little bit. I think maybe that mid-range game plan might end up working, but if these Rosetta heroes end up being very powerful, she could have some issues with their late game, and also Enigma. I feel like the Enigma matchup's just awful. If Enigma brings any type of defensive tools into that matchup, I think Enigma just runs away with it eventually if they're playing properly. That's just my opinion. So yeah, maybe she goes a little bit. I'll probably put her like right here. I'm not gonna lie. If they prove me wrong, they prove me wrong. But Warrior is one of those classes that kind of has to prove their worth again, sadly, because I do love the class, especially Hatchet's story. I took that to a battle hard in Blitz actually. It was super fun. Enigma. It's going to be highly represented, probably like up here. It's probably going to be one of the especially early on in the first 2 Battle Hardens before ProQuest season, I expect this to be either the first or second most represented deck, and it's probably right here. I'm not going to put it like way up here because it's not like tier 0 Zen good right now. We have to see and make sure, so I'm going to be a little bit hesitant, but I do think it's going to be extremely represented and a very high meta pick in terms of, especially early on in the meta. Now, we talked about this last night on Give and Take, and if you want to go watch that, go to DM Armanda's channel. He has the VODs for it. Super fun show. I think, like I said, there's going to be 3 iterations of this meta. You're going to see the Rosetta release portion with the first Battle Hardened, and I think Enigma is going to be up here for that. And then when we get to ProQuest season, I think she comes down to like here. And then by the time we get to Worlds, I could see her like here. Like, literally, I think she trends downward as we go along, because once people figure out these arcane heroes, and then once Dash.io gets her tools and Max gets her tools, I think they're going to give Enigma fits, and I think Enigma is going to go down slowly. But early on, if you're going to one of those big events or even the first week of ProQuest season, Enigma is a very, very good pick, and until proven otherwise, I think she's one of the top decks in the format for sure. Then we have Fi. Fi's big sad. Fi's really bad. Really, really bad. I'd honestly rather be playing Arachne right now, and that's not even me coping. That's legitimately, I think without Art of War, Fi is actually awful. You could play it if you wanted to try to counter Enigma, but even then, why are you not? Zen's still better. Like, Fi is just bad. Without Art of War, the deck is, and without Tamer Firebrand, you can't even play that version of the deck, the obscure one with Phoenix form. I don't see any reason to play. This hero is like in the dumpster. So bad. Kano is really interesting because Kano still has a very, even with the tomes being banned, Kano has still a very prominent tempo plan. Like, yes, you don't get the turn 2 kills that you used to because you essentially started at like a low 50s card deck because of the tomes, and you could cycle through really fast to find your combo pieces. So he does lose that a little bit, and he does lose a lot of his stacking plan, but he still can kill out of nowhere. It's probably going to be very really low represented because people are going to want to be playing Verdance and Acilio, even though they kind of play on a different axis as Wizards than Kano did. I'd probably put Kano like right here. I don't think it's an awful pick. I really don't. But it's going to be very lowly represented, I think. So I'd probably put Kano right there, to be completely honest. Katsu, same thing. Not quite bad as Fi, but still very bad. Probably not as good as Bravo. Better than Arachne. I'd probably put Katsu like right there. But it's equally as bad as Fi. Not quite as much in the dumpster, in my opinion. Katsu has a little bit more mid-range potential than Fi does. But yeah, that's just my opinion. Kasai, losing Cashin does hurt Kasai's ability to keep up with tempo. I don't know if Kasai is bad or not per se. But I don't think it's gonna be very represented. You're probably gonna have a little bit, probably on the same rung as Bolton in terms of how good the hero is, but lesser represented. Bolton probably is more represented than Kasai at this point. So because of that, I'd probably put her on the same rung as Bolton in terms of power, but less representation. And we're seeing this side fill up a lot. We're going to get to the good heroes here in a second, I promise. KO, another great pick. KO is a high meta pick right now. It kind of goes back to being the premier aggro, I guess, deck until the Dash.io tools come out. Really, really good deck. It's going to be really highly represented. I actually think it probably is the most represented deck in the format. I'd probably put it a little bit behind Enigma in terms of meta pick, just barely. I just want to not cover Enigma's face. But I do think it's going to be the most represented deck in the format week 1. That's my guess. A lot of people that were on Zen probably came from KO. And I think they'll go back to KO. KO just has good tools. Doesn't really have a bad matchup. The thing with these two heroes is they don't have a polarizing bad matchup. They really don't. Every hero they play, they have something into. Enigma's arguably worst matchup is probably Dash.io and Max. And that's still winnable. KO's worst matchup, honestly, is probably Enigma, and that's still winnable. So overall, I think both of these heroes are in a fantastic spot. Max is weird. I'm going to rank the Max and Dash.io in terms of after the Armory kit. I know the Armory kit doesn't come out for another month. I get it. But the time between the day Rosetta releases and the Armory kit is only like 23 days, so 3 weeks. Yeah, it's like it comes out the second week of ProQuest season, so I guess I'll show both, but I'm gonna ended spot on where it will be post Armory Kit. Pre Armory Kit, I think the deck's not is probably like right here, similar to Dorinthia, and I think the Armory Kit boosts Max pretty good. It probably still won't be highly represented, but I think the deck kind of goes here. I think Max is already really strong, but I think with the Armory pieces, I think it's like right up there with Dash. It might even be even with Dash, truly, like because you just have, I don't know. I think it's, yeah, that I'm going to say that. I think post Armory Kit, I think it's same as Dash, just a little bit less represented, but the deck is good now. And I think more people just need to start playing it personally. And I think once the Armory Kit comes out, it's going to be really good. If we get into a mid-range meta, where value matters and Max can set up these high-octane mech turns, it's actually insane. Now, if Verdance gets really good, it gets a little bit spicy because she has hand and arsenal, like auto disruption. So it's going to be really hard to arsenal that mechanoid. However, still really good deck. And I think it has multiple tools now. The crank item is actually pretty good in it. I think the equipment's pretty good. Upgrade headpiece, potentially upgraded boots if you want to go that route and you want to put Achilles on the side just to have some AB. But we'll see. Or you just keep Achilles because it doesn't ever leave the field. But regardless, I think Max is going to end up being a pretty good pick, and I'm really excited to see where the hero goes. Then we have New. New is a weird hero. I've been testing into New this week with Verdance and Florian, and granted, obviously those builds are new, so like grain of salt, but it's so weird. I think early on, this hero is actually not very good to play right now, but it's going to be represented pretty well. I think KO is not a bad matchup, but it's not a great matchup either. It's kind of like 50-50. I'd actually say it's slightly unfavored because KO can just kind of outvalue you if you don't like hyper disrupt them. So it can be a little bit rough. This deck rose to prominence because it countered Zen. Right, so it needs to be able to counter something in this meta, and countering Enigma and KO is very difficult for New. It's not impossible, it's just harder. So I probably put it right here. As Enigma trends down, like I said, in the first 3 iterations, like when it goes to like the ProQuest, I think it kind of goes up because this hero, I think, is going to be very good into the Rosetta heroes. It's really good into Aurora and Acilio because it can't block. It's good into Dash IO. When she gets her tools. It can disrupt Max pretty well, and it does really well, into, like I said, the Rosetta heroes because their blues are playable, right? Being able to gain life off Verdance's blues is really, really cool. Being able to gain life off and Florian's blue, or not gain life, but play Florian's blues. Like, they have very playable blues, and they're not blues that they can really swap out. It's very similar to Victor. Like, there's not much you can do. I literally had a New against me, and I was doing everything I could. I was blocking with my reds. I wasn't giving them good blues, or trying not to at least. And they ended up gaining like 12 life off of my cards. It was just ridiculous, and ended up beating me on Verdance. So I think once we get into the second iteration of the meta, where you start to see Rosetta heroes take more of a prominence, I think this hero goes like this. But right now, currently, I'd probably put like right there because I think both these matchups, like Enigma is very difficult, very unfavored in my opinion, even with Tech. When the Enigma is ready for you and doesn't have to worry about Zen, that matchup becomes awful with the ward build. And then KO is not an easy win either. Like, KO can just outvalue you if you don't get like that target disruption early. So I'm going to put New here right now, maybe right in the middle. She's not a bad pick. But she'll be highly represented, though. So you still have to have a plan for her, in my opinion, regardless of where I think she is from a power perspective. Maybe we put her like right there. She's over the 50% mark. Next one's Olympia. I'm not even going to bother with this one. Olympia is not going to be played at all. And I think it's better than Betsy. It's better than Phi. It's better than Arachne. It's probably on the same level as Katsu. We're going to put it right here so you can see all the heroes, but it's in that region. Then we have Prism. Prism's really interesting. I think Prism's going to have, so the Vestige tome plan is gone, right? Like, you can still run Vestige, but the Aura plan's a lot harder to make work now, right? Some people might even go back to Tunic, to be honest, just to be able to get those out a little bit better. Maybe not. I'm not sure. I'm not a Prism main. I do play Prism, but not like skilled, obviously. But that plan's kind of hard, so you're kind of going into Herald Beatdown with like parables and celestial reprimands and stuff, which can work. I've seen several prisms do it, but with that being gone, on top of the fact that a lot of the top decks in the meta are going to be decent with poppers, like Mech can bring in poppers pretty well. KO, obviously, Popper City. Enigma, if they're teching for Prism, can give Prism fits. You're going to see Levia do pretty well. The Rosetta heroes are going to be running a fair amount of poppers because a lot of their key Earth cards are poppers. So we'll have to see. I think she'll be decently represented. Probably not as much as new. See, this is where I started changing things up a little bit. Probably just barely less than Azalea. And then I probably put her like right here. Maybe a little bit less. Because she's better than new in this format, in my opinion. But she's not going to be as represented as either of those. She'll probably be more represented than Dash. Maybe right there. Let me know in the comments down below. She's a really hard one to put, right? Because there's certain parts of the world that really love their Prism, so I guess it depends where you're at. Rhinar, really bad. Rhinar is here. You're starting to see this, but basically probably in the same level as Katsu and Olympia, right? Just remember that. But sorry, Katsu, you can't even see Katsu now. Then we have Riptide. I think Riptide's actually a pretty fair pick right now. I don't think it's going to be as represented, but I do think it is a very decent pick. I think it beats new. I think it can beat Prism. It loses the max. It can lose the dash depending on the build if they're not ready for it. It is 50-50 into Azalea. It does pretty okay into Enigma depending on the build, but it can be a little difficult. Riptide's really hard because Riptide, in my opinion, is actually very similar to Assassin, where you kind of got to know what you're teching into. Like, because the aim build, the aggro build, and the defensive build all have different matchup spreads, and you run them depending on what the meta looks like. So it works very similar to Assassin, where it's almost like a mini counter deck. And right now, with the unknown meta to start, it's going to be a little bit difficult. I do think it's above the 50% mark. I just don't think it's going to be very represented. Probably more represented than Dorinthia, but it's not. See, this is where new probably has to actually go like right here, probably as more of a meta pick, because I don't think they're new and Riptide are on. Well, they probably are on the same level for the most part currently. It's really weird. New's very good. I'll put new a little bit ahead, but a little bit more of a meta pick, but lower representation, obviously. But I think it'll be higher than Max, probably around the same, probably actually as Max, and then a little bit lower on the meta pick. Next one's Teklevossen. Teklevossen actually isn't horrible. Sorry, my cats are going nuts. Teklevossen isn't horrible. But I just, in this mid-range meta, you could make an argument for Teklevossen. The problem is, like, it just straight gets dogged on by Enigma, like absolutely dumpstered. And it doesn't do insanely well, I think, in a Prism either, if I'm correct, if I stand corrected. So I don't know. It's a weird spot. It's definitely gained some ground, but you probably won't see it very much. So it's definitely going to be in low representation. Is it better than Kano in the current meta? I think Kano maybe is like right here then. It's like probably right below Kano in terms of how good it is. Maybe I'm wrong on that one. Let me know. Some of these heroes are hard to rank, to be completely honest. Uziri, I think this is going to be somewhat of a spicy take. I don't think it's that spicy of a take, though, personally. I think it's better than new. I think it has a better matchup spread. So Uziri is weird. She has a far worse time into Enigma than new does. Hands down, not going to argue that. But when you talk about everyone else, she's better into. She has a better damage ceiling and can do a little bit better into the Rosetta heroes from what I've been seeing already. She does a little bit better into KO, in my opinion, because she can have target disruption with some of the 2 costs that really matter for KO. You know, cards like Weakest Link, being able to swap in even Erase Face, which matters for like Blood Rush Bellows. She has a lot more flexibility. She wins that matchup. She's favored into new, in my opinion. And she is equally as good in everything else. So she struggles into Enigma more, but she has slight percentage points into like Prism. In my opinion, KO. She's a little bit better into Max and just Mech in general. Yeah, I would put her a little bit higher than new in terms of meta pick, but she'll definitely be less represented. So is she better than Prism right now? Probably on the equal footing of Prism. She'll be more represented than Riptide. No, she'll actually probably be less represented than Riptide. Or about the same. But I probably put her on this equal footing as Prism, but less represented. But I do think she's better than New. I think she edges New out a little bit. It all depends. If you're just saying I want to attack Enigma, then New, and you're playing Assassin, then New's probably the best pick for you. But if you're not doing that, then I do think it's, if you're wanting to like have a holistic meta spread, I think that Uziri is better personally. That's just my opinion. Victor is really weird. I think Victor's going to be decently represented, but it might not be the best pick right now. It's going to struggle into the ward-based Enigma. Assassin's still running around, makes it a little bit difficult. Max and Dash, I think, both can beat it. Like, a lot of the decks that are going to be high up in the format are just going to outvalue it. I think both Florian and Verdance will outvalue Victor. Like, he does have some disruptive tools, but both of them have late game plans that can just kill the Victor outright. I think Victor's going to struggle a little bit. But Victor is also a hero that at like the ProQuest level, if you don't have a plan into it or you're not super skilled in like second cycle games, it's just going to win because of its value train. So I think at the ProQuest level, you'll still see it like here. But overall, like Battle Hardened and like Worlds and stuff, you'll probably see it here. So I think it's down here. I think it's still gonna be decently represented. Maybe it like goes back there. It's definitely better than Doranthea though. I can't put it. Maybe Doranthea goes back a little bit. I can't put it behind Doranthea. That's just absurd. Yeah, maybe it goes down there. Maybe we're like slightly here. Is probably where I'm at with Victor. Yeah. Viserai. Viserai is the hot topic. I think Viserai is very good, and I think Viserai, I think Vincent is the best Rune Blade. I'll say that straight up. But in a 9-round tournament, Florian probably will prove to be the best Rune Blade. We'll see. But currently, right now, I think it's Vincent. But in a 9-round tournament, I'd rather be playing like a calling. I'd rather be playing Viserai than Vincent because Vincent just kills herself sometimes. And it feels really bad. She's very similar to Levi, where she's going to have one game where she draws bad at the wrong time and literally dies on the spot. I think Viserai is better than Victor now. I think it's in a better spot than Assassins. I think it's in a better spot than Riptide. I think it's in a better spot than Prism. I would probably, in meta pick-wise, I would put it slightly above all of these heroes. I'd put Viserai right there. I think it's in a better spot than Azalea, Dash, and Max. The question now is it represented more? I think it will be represented more than the mechs, but I don't think it will be represented more than Azalea. If it proves to be good, maybe this goes up like this. But right now, I'm going to put it right here. I think Viserai is in a really good spot, and that's kind of where I would put it, to be completely honest. Vincent, very similar. I think she'll be lower represented, but I think she's even with Viserai. I think her and Viserai both are in very good spots. I think Viserai is going to be a little bit more consistent. That's just my opinion. The Vincent mains will be out there letting me know I'm wrong, though. I love y'all. Y'all are super passionate fan base. That's like no trolling at all. Y'all are hilarious. But I think it's a very good pick. Is it better than Max? I think slightly. But it probably won't be as represented. Maybe it's like right here. It's kind of where I would put it. So, yeah. Zen is interesting. I haven't had like a ton of practices in post bans or against Zen. I've played a couple games. The deck's definitely slower. The problem with the deck now is because if Art of War wouldn't have been banned, but just Bonds would have been banned, then you could have played like the Roar the Tiger build with Art of War and actually would have been pretty decent, I think. But with Art of War ban, that version of the build hurts a little bit. Now I think Zen goes to like running Harmony of the Hunts and Biting Breezes and just tries to have like really good value. I definitely think the deck's pretty good, but the problem is like it's not better than KO, it's not better than Azalea, so like why are you playing it? If you want a hard counter Enigma and you just go into I think the deck is actually probably like right here because it counters Enigma so well because Tiger Stripe Shuko is a hell of a card. But as Enigma trends down, which I think she will, you'll start to see Zen kind of be probably like right here. But the deck's still functional. It still works. It's a good, solid, consistent aggro deck, in my opinion. It just doesn't have the highs that it did before, which is going to hurt it. And then the final hero before we get into the new ones, Dash.io. I'm going to rank her based off post Armory deck because that's when she's going to start to shine. This deck goes to here post Armory deck. I'm just immediately going to put it there. This will be the premier aggro deck, in my opinion. Some people are saying like people are overhyping it. I don't think so. the deck is prone to disruption, and it still has some consistency issues at times. But you have to put it up here, in my opinion. If you want me to say like, so in meta pick, I think it's slightly better than Viserai and Vincent, maybe like right, just barely better than them. Will it be as I think it also will be pretty highly represented because people are going to buy that Armory deck and want to play it. And so I think it's up there, personally. So that's where I put it. Pre-Armory deck, it's probably like back here, but I think it moves up to like right there. And I'm cheating a little bit because like I'm ranking Enigma based off where she is now, not in early October, mid-October, but I'm ranking Max and Dash.io where they'll be early mid-October. So it's a little bit wonky, but I kind of have to do that because these two heroes are just going to get such good upgrades come October. Then we have the 4 new heroes. So Florian, I think, is a very good Runeblade. I think Florian will end up being very represented. I think Florian is better than Azalea and Dash. I think it'll eventually start eking out Viserai and Vincent in terms of meta pick, and I think it'll be very represented. I think the hero will be like the premier Runeblade. People have been itching for a Runeblade to be good for so long. If you've only been in the game like 2 years or less, you didn't get to experience when it was only Runeblade, or it felt like it was. It was like Runeblade, Illusionist, and Guardian. That was it. That was like 90% of all decks being played. I think Florian ends up right there. Acilio, I love Acilio to death. I know Taylor Crawford and their team have been doing think they're doing some spiciness, and we'll see tonight at the time of this recording on the Card Guys versus Blue Pitch stream. Hopefully he's unlocked something, but the deck's too prone to disruption. It folds to any form of disruption whatsoever. It is a decent deck, but I think it will be decently represented regardless. I don't think it's a good deck. I think it's better than Kano. I think it's probably better than Teklavos, and it's probably slightly better than Dory if piloted and tuned correctly. But I also think it's not a great pick, but I think it will be represented. I think it will be slightly more represented than Victor eventually. Maybe a little bit less than Prism, though. Maybe it's like right here. But regardless, I think Acilio is the weakest of the 4 new heroes. Then we have Aurora. I think Aurora will also be very represented, probably more than new, or more than Prism, less than new, less than Azalea. I think Aurora ends up like right here is my guess. The new heroes are so hard. I'm thinking of the new heroes more in representation rather than power, because power is almost impossible to judge right now other than like just first glance stuff. I do think Verdansk is going to be very good, especially when Enigma starts to trend downward. I think Verdansk gets even stronger and stronger and stronger. I think the hero has several game plans that are very good. It might not be quite as represented as Aurora. I'd probably put Verdansk here. Let's see. It's going to be more represented than Dash, not quite as represented as Azalea maybe, or on the same par as Azalea. Is it better than Aurora is the question. I think it is better than Aurora. Maybe it goes like right here. I'm starting to get a little muddied here, trying to show everybody's face. This is kind of how I view it. So as we're looking at this now with all the heroes on there, gosh, that was a lot. We're starting to get to a lot of heroes. Dash, you need a living legend. Yeah, I think KO is the meta pick. I think KO's Enigma's the meta pick, but KO is the most represented. And then I think it kind of goes down here. Maybe Dash.io's representation goes down just a little bit. I do think it'll be more in Viserai. I think Verdansk will be up a little bit. This will be up just so we can see Azalea's face more than anything. Do we think Aurora will be more represented than Verdansk? I don't think so. I think Prism might go down a little bit in representation at that point too, which means Victor goes down. Everything trends down a little bit. Riptide will probably be more Nuziri. Max goes up a little bit. This side, we just keep it how it is. Maybe Dorinthia goes down. Yeah, I'll just keep it like this. I think this is fine enough. Let me know what you think, though. I think this is a cool, interesting way to look at meta. If I got something insanely wrong, let me know. I'd love to hear it because it doesn't bother me at all. This is like the fun time, right? This is like, again, this is like you watching your ESPN week 1 of the preseason and the people are making their Super Bowl picks. Or, 2 weeks after the Super Bowl, you see ESPN do a way too early, next year segment. That's the whole fun part of this, right? So like look at it that way. Look at it as a fun discussion point, not like this like totalitarian I am right, I know what the meta is going to be thing, because I don't think it's that. But yeah, let me know what y'all think. I'd love to hear it. If you like this type of content, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe. If not me, it's completely fine. Go to Nerd Creator, leave a like, comment, subscribe on their stuff. Let's get more people seeing this game. And I'll see y'all next time on TCG Talk. Thank y'all so much.